My name is Prashant Jagannathan. I'm an offering manager at IBM, and for today, I'd like to show you IBM Spectrum Protect Plus. It's a new data protection offering. We did this recently, and after we launched the product, we made some cool new updates. So we wanted to just give you a refresh, as well as share what's new in the product. So before going into the product itself, I just wanted to start with what are the key data protection trends that we are seeing and how we are adapting to these trends with the product itself. I'm sure a lot of this is already familiar to you, but just wanted to do a level set before I go into the product itself. So the first three, again, it's common application and data recovery. Data availability is the whole reason that you do backups, right? You want backups, so at some point, if you lose data, you want to get it back. The next level is disaster recovery. So I lost my whole site. How do I get back and up and running? Then is business continuity. It's a superset of disaster recovery. Business continuity is I've lost my site. Now you have my data, but how can I continue my business and with minimal impact? These have been trends in data protection forever. But what we are seeing new are the last two things, right? In the last year or so, we see data reuse gaining more prominence. So what's data reuse? Data reuse is more, I have the data protected as backup. Can I do more with it? Can I just, is it just for backup and just for restore, or can I put it to more use? And the last one, again, in the last year or so, this has become a really hot trend, that is cyber resiliency. There are two concepts from cyber resiliency, like left side of the attack or left side of the bomb and the right side of the attack. So left side is how can I prevent hackers from getting my data itself from production? And the right side of the boom is, okay, now the data is hacked, how can I bring it back up and running? So I'll be talking more about the right side, like right side of the attack. Now you're attacked, how can you use backup as a point to recover your data? And there's also a concept of modernizing data protection. So what do you mean by that? Data protection in terms of cost has been coming fairly down, right? As even you're protecting more and more data, the infrastructure itself is getting cheaper and cheaper. So now the businesses are seeing, in terms of return on investment, they even newer data, more data that they can add, the cost is getting lower. So there's need for spending more money in modernizing it than just trying to add more storage to get your data all in. The next trend is, in terms of modernization, is improved performance. We're seeing the storage technology improving year over year, right? So you had flash, now it's NVMe. So performance is improving day by day. And that means, but the backup is still behind. You're still relying on older storage, cheaper storage. But with data modernization and backup modernization, you can improve on the performance itself with all the modern technology that's available. And another trend for modernizing is simple management. Traditionally, again, backup has been, I want my data protected. I don't care how complex it is. Just back up my data. Now users are going towards, I have multiple hats that I'm wearing. I'm not just a backup admin anymore. I have other work. Can you make it simple and easy to manage, right? So simplified management is a key thing that we keep getting asked from every customer. I want to make it simple, just modernize the whole thing for me. Multi-cloud, I guess I don't have to tell you guys, cloud is where everything is going, and customer needs to have the choice on what cloud they want to use their back up their data or choose their data based on different criterion. So from a backup perspective, the product needs to be more agile on which clouds that you want to back up to and give customers the choice. So multi-cloud is very important for modernizing the backup itself. And last but not least is enhanced business agility. Going back to what can you do with backups, right? It's if you just am I just getting recovery out of it, or can I put it to more use? We are also seeing different phases in the process of data access. Traditionally, it's in the pyramid. You see the bottom two. It's backup, traditional backup and restore, and it's used for streaming all the data to a target. and streaming it back. And then once you want it for cheaper and denser storage, you go into archive. So you keep it for a certain time and then go into a long-term archive. But with modernization comes more the operational recovery. Traditionally, operational recovery meant, okay, I could get data within the 72 hours. There's a time window, there was an RTO that you had to meet. But that's, with the data growing tremendously, that's hard to meet. So what businesses are asking for is, I want faster, more reliable operational recovery tier. So it's not just streaming backup, streaming restore, or archive. I want it to land in a tier where it's instantly accessible. So we see trends like instant data access, instant recovery, snapshot technology, et cetera, being at the top of the data access. So almost a given that the first location where the data lands needs to be that operational fast recovery tier, and then go into the streaming tier before you go into the long-term archive. So we got all that as input and feedback, and we came up with a modern data protection solution. I mean, earlier we asked how many of you have used Spectrum Protect or TSM. Almost all of you are familiar with it. And Spectrum Protect is still awesome. We still have several thousand customers using it. When it comes to modernization, all these requirements made us rethink the whole data protection strategy and come up with this new product. So again, we created this Spectrum Protect Plus product for the key point being ease of use and ease to deploy and manage. We didn't want several components involved in the data protection product, so we deploy it as a simple downloadable OVA, which I'll go into a little more detail. So we made the deployment process fairly simple and straightforward. Instead of doing it for several days, finish it in an hour or so. Simplified SLA management was one of the key requirements, so we came up with a very usable, intuitive user interface. You will see as I walk through a demo, a few clicks to get into any of the operations instead of long drawn, setting up different media, setting up different agents, et cetera. Proactive backup catalog, we are making a lot of automations towards the product itself. And you'll see that we are allowing scheduling. We are making sure we can detect any new data that you are adding into your environment, automatically adding to the SLA. Another key thing, like I mentioned in the previous slide, is instant access, that operational recovery tier. We are storing data in a native format that allows us to instantly bring up copy anytime and pick any of the data set that you want to use. So we're no longer saving it as fulls, incrementals, et cetera. Every backup is block level, and every backup looks like a full image. So you can use any of them at any given point in time. Software defined, IBM has this mentality of software defined across the entire portfolio, and we've extended that message to the data protection itself. We try to leverage a customer's existing infrastructure. So we come in as a software where you can deploy in your infrastructure and then provide all the capabilities of ease of deployment, management, et cetera. Self-service, we have granular role-based access control. So a user can define you can create users, and you can also customize roles for them. They could be a backup user, a restore user. They'll only be allowed to do certain operations and will only get access to certain resources. And the last two things go hand in hand: automation, orchestration, and REST APIs. As we see developers and data protection and infrastructure wearing multiple hats, there's almost a crossover of what they can do, which means that they are asking for, okay, I want this to be more automated, as well as to be able to use existing process and tools that are driving toward REST APIs. I want to use my tools that have REST APIs to work with your tools, so it makes life easy for me. So Spectrum Protect Plus day one was built with REST APIs in mind. When I go through the demo, the UI, all the operations in the UI is all using those same REST APIs to the back end. So if you want to plug into any other product with the REST APIs, you can easily do so. The latest update, we launched this, literally it went GA last week. We're calling the version 10.1.3. This is our new release. We started off with supporting VMware and Hyper-V, started off in the hypervisor space, and then we've added more workloads on top of it. We have Microsoft SQL, Oracle, DB2. In this latest release in 10.1.3, we added support for MongoDB, Exchange. And if you can see all the applications that we support, it's built in such a way that it'll work across both apps running in a virtual environment as well as in a physical server. So we don't have a separate way to back up physical servers or virtual. These apps, they work seamlessly across the board. And the primary use case, again, it's data reuse is the heart of the product. Any of the backups that you see will be still instantly reusable, and you can use it for different purposes like test or development, the DevOps model, bridging the gap between developer asking for infrastructure and the ops team wanting for data instantly. And the same data can be presented for reporting or analytics purposes. Again, digging deeper into what's new in the 10.1.3 itself, we added two new applications, MongoDB. This is both the community edition as well as the enterprise edition. Microsoft Exchange, we still see a lot of customers who have on-premises Exchange server. They're moving to Office 365 as well, but they're still a decent size who are using it on-premises. So we added support for Exchange. It's starting from Exchange 2013 above. It also supports the latest Exchange 2019. We added offload as a function. So traditionally, in the prior releases, we backed up to our repository, and that repository was replicated to a DR site. In terms of putting it to another archive tier or a tier where it required additional data retention, we supported Spectrum Protect. In this release, we've added a lot of optimization on how we land data into Spectrum Protect. On top of that, we've added other locations as the offload target. So we've targeted the cloud. We started with Amazon, so we're leveraging S3 APIs to offload data into Amazon. We also support IBM's cloud object storage offering. So IBM has an on-premises offering for the IBM Cause, and they also have a public cloud IBM Cause service, so we support both. And also, IBM Cause has a worm capability for immutable object storage. We are supporting that as well. And the other cloud vendor that we're supporting is Microsoft Azure. We support the hot and the cold Azure blob storage.
So you're talking about Exchange Server and Exchange 365. Do you talk about any of the other Office 365 components? And I'm thinking specifically of SharePoint and OneDrive.
Right. So for this release, we've just added the on-premises Exchange servers. Office 365 is in our roadmap. And for that also, we are targeting email Exchange Online first. In terms of customer demand, we are seeing Exchange as a higher priority. SharePoint is close behind. And the other ones we are hearing it as good to have or nice to have. So when we add them, it'll be Exchange Online first, followed by SharePoint, and the others to follow.
So I'm in the channel, and
okay.
I can tell you that my customers are clamoring for a better Office 365.
The whole suite.
Full suite.
Full suite.
Product.
Okay.
Yes.
Got it. Makes sense. Okay, that's good feedback. Thank you. Okay. In terms of the other new features for the 10.1.3 release, we've added support for high availability. We are leveraging some of VMware's functionality and Hyper-V to make sure the server component, the management server, is highly available. And as I mentioned before, the product was built with REST API from day one. We've added some additional enhancements over analytics.
That's a question.
Sorry, go ahead.
I've seen VMware and Hyper-V in this slide and in the previous slide. Do you also support physical workloads?
Right. So let me just go back one step. So yeah, VMware and Hyper-V in terms of the hypervisors. In terms of physical servers, that support is for our applications. So any apps running on a physical server.
Is it just x86? Because I see you have DB2 up there. Do you support AX as well?
That is correct. So we support x86 as well as for some of the applications like Oracle, DB2 and Mongo, it can be on AIX as well.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, just to finish up the point about the enhanced REST APIs, we are now exposing some analytics data through REST APIs as well. So if customers are interested in knowing for chargeback information, how much data did a VM last night, or show me the data about the week, show me all the VMs that you have in terms of recovery, we are now exposing those kind of details through REST APIs so users can plug into their existing tool framework.
So is it just reporting through the REST API?
That's the enhancement we've added.
Okay.
In the previous release, the product was built with REST APIs in mind. So any operation, like the automation, if I want to kick off a backup, I want to set up a backup, you could already do it through REST APIs. In this release, we enhanced it to add analytics data as well. And we also have a community, like a GitHub community, where we post REST API examples. So if customers want to try out certain operation, they don't have to script themselves. They can just download it from the GitHub. Some common examples, like I want to kick off a backup, I want to do my own scheduling, et cetera. So for that, we have sample scripts that they can just download and customize to what they want. Okay, I talked about reuse before. I'll touch upon that a little bit more. Again, from a data reuse use case, what we are hearing from customers is, I'm making an investment in a data protection software. How can I get more beyond just backup, beyond just my traditional restore in case of a failure? The way we store data is in the form of snapshots, and the data is also in a native format. So each of these snapshots is still made available as a full. And these snapshots can be instantly mounted. And the snapshots, by snapshots, I mean the workloads, all the workloads that I mentioned before, VMware, Hyper-V, SQL, Oracle, all of these are available for instant access. I can mount a single database or a single VM as a live working environment in your production or in your test site. And you can also perform some automation around it. I could schedule a test restore and say, run it daily, keep my Oracle environment or my SQL environment up and running from my latest backup copy.
So
Go ahead.
Let me just qualify that a second. You said you can restore an application back and make it instantly available. And on the previous slide, you said that applications like DB2 were backed up as an application, not as an actual VM if it was on physical.
Correct.
So how do you restore back the database to make it look like it was the original database? Is that what you can do?
That's correct. So for VMs and application, even when we're talking about physical server, the way we back up is we're backing it. The way we store data is in the form of snapshots, and we're backing up a database instance into our backup repository and taking snapshots. So when it times for restore, I say instant access. I'll go pick a database, and it'll mount the snapshot as a LUN or a share.
But if it's a physical server that's running an application, how are you snapshotting that application on the physical server?
Right. So we are grabbing the data from the physical server. It's still the same way, right? For example, if I'm using Oracle, it'll be through an RMAN image backup. So I get the data block.
That's not a snapshot in that instance.
Right. It's stored as a snapshot, though.
Right.
So they fabricate a snapshot at the target device?
Exactly. It's stored as a snapshot on the target.
So even though they're getting an image copy, they're fabricating a snapshot at the target device so that it could be mounted instantly? Is that
exactly? Yeah. So it's stored as a snapshot. I can mount the snapshot, and I can import the database from the snapshot. So Plus will orchestrate all of that. It'll mount the snapshot to the physical server, and then say, here's the Oracle database. I want to bring it back. And you could say, okay, you want to bring it from the snapshot time or apply log. So there are additional operations that you can perform.
And then a subsequent backup would do like change block tracking or something like that?
That is correct. So when I'm doing a backup, the first is a full, and that's applicable across the board. VMs are physical databases. That first time will be a full backup, and from that point we track block level changes, depending on the APIs. Right? It's block level changes for all the applications. VMware, we get it from CBT. Oracle, we get some image blocking image information based on the changes.
You also provided some consolidation points. just not to get, an infinite log of changes after that, or?
That's the cool part of it. The way it's stored as snapshots, it's all pointers, so it's not required to do a synthetic full. We're not doing any synthetic full in the background. Typically, in a synthetic full, you need to do this consolidation. We are just transferring the data blocks and taking a snapshot of that, of what would look like a current image of the data. So that snapshot itself will have all the information corresponding to how the database looks like at that point in time. Does that make sense? Does that answer the question?
But what happens if I have a retention policy? So I get the first full, and in 1 month from now it disappears because my retention has to delete this old backup.
Okay.
So I need a new full at the time.
Right. So basically, the snapshot data is pointers, right? So say if you have a weekly retention and you're doing daily backups. So the first full has all the blocks corresponding to the full. Maybe I should choose the the whiteboard.
You can use it. Okay.
And Jim here, you can correct me or.
No, if you want me to jump in, let me know.
Sure, whenever you can. Let me try to take a first pass, and then maybe Jim can help me over here. So you have a source, which is the app that you're backing up. And in our case, we have the target. So the first time we send a full, say call it day 0. So this is snap 0. And day 1, we just send 1 block over, right? And say this block has changed. So the snapshots basically will have pointers.
I totally agree with that.
Sorry?
If I have a 1 week retention, okay, so the
Right,
8th day, what happens?
So during this snapshot, any block that doesn't have
Currency.
will get deleted.
Okay, I see.
But there'll still be pointers going back to the ones that have any relation. So this will still look like a full for me.
I'm sorry, you're going to delete the blocks that aren't currently being retained? Or a data, or you're actually replicating them to the current one? I don't see how you could delete the block in the middle of a
We're not deleting anything in the middle. I'm just saying the older snapshot,
Yeah.
if it's set for,
no longer going to be retained?
if not the entire snapshot, the snapshot will be deleted, and any blocks that still have pointed to it will be consolidated in this snap 1.
It's basically the allocation table that says, here's what makes up this state.
Correct.
Gets blown away, so it's like you blow away your allocation table, and then you go garbage collect and say, well,
But anything
what were
that's
orphaned
been,
by this?
but anything that's actually been overridden would be thrown away or something.
That's right. You wanna add something?
Yeah, every time a snapshot goes out, they just track the changes.
Right. So
That's okay.
we have something called a maintenance policy that runs, which will look up, okay, what snapshot are marked for deletion, and the older snapshot typically, when we delete the snapshots, the underlying file system will do a scrub to see what data blocks are still needed, what snapshot is still using it, and then it'll do a consolidation.
And when you do the instant restore, the ability to bring it instantly back, where is the data going back to, or where is it being made available from?
Right. Okay. So when I'm doing an instant restore, this snapshot will be, and for an instant restore, I can go back to my original location and say mount it as another copy. I want to do some test, or I can bring it to a completely different location.
Yeah, so let's take an example there where the source was RMAN, and you backed up as an RMAN database on a physical server. So your source, you might not even know what the file system is, right, or the structure of the physical storage on that server. And now you're going to bring back a copy and somehow make that instantly available back on that server?
Right. So let me clarify that. So the first one, we're doing RMAN from an image back. So RMAN is the image copy. So that's to get the data from Oracle. But we still have knowledge about the file system.
Oh,
So
right, okay.
we still know which file system it came from.
Right, okay, because when Max mentioned that earlier, you said you weren't backing up the physical server.
Right.
You were
So
only backing up the application, but you are
right.
doing-
So we don't care which storage it's on, but there's there's an operating system in the file system layer. So that we still know what we
Right,
still
so you are
keep track of.
collecting data on that.
We're still collecting data from
Okay.
there. So we have some awareness of where the data is. If it's an AIX or if it's in a Red Hat or some Oracle version.
So then when you instant restore, how does that then come back?
Right. So instant restore. First thing we do is let's say you pick any snapshot, pick anyone from the middle of the chain as well, and you'll say which snapshot to pick, where do you want to restore to, and then it'll do a mount first. Again, if it's VMware, we'll mount it as a data store, NFS data store, and make it available. Import the VM. If it's a physical server, again, Windows, it could be a LUN. On a Linux server, it could be an NFS share on iSCSI.
Okay.
We present that data as in some usable format. So it's attached as a local disk or a local share to that server. And because we're storing data in a native format, it'll be an Oracle image. And after that, we contact directly the server and say, OK, I have attached the LUN, and this is the database I want you to mount. And it'll do the Oracle operations, alter database.
And those snapshots are read-writable?
No.
So they could actually be updated and stuff like that?
But in theory, the snapshot itself is read-only. When we present it as a mount, it's in a read-write state. So we basically make it available. So when the server, you're performing operation on it, it'll be read-write. You can make changes to it. Those writes are stored in a temporary cache location.
Technically, we make a clone
Right.
of the readable snapshot to present out back to the application.
Okay, so you are not writing your backup.
Correct. Yeah, exactly. Sorry. The backup is immutable, right? So that's the snapshot is read-only. When we are presenting it, it's presented in a read-write. Like we create a clone of it, present it read-write, so you can make changes to it, work on it. And at the end of it, you could pick either I'm done with it, clean it up, it'll go ahead and unmount, clean up all the changes, or you can say, okay, I want to do a full restore. At that point, it'll restore the data, physically copy data from my backup repository into where you want to go.
I'm sorry, just to finish off on it, because I don't want to sort of hold up too much, but in terms of credentials then and managing that process, how much of that is automated and how much of that does a backup administrator or somebody else need to get involved with?
Right. So some of it I'm going to show you during the demo itself.
Okay.
So I'll go into a little more detail during the But to quickly answer you, so there's two levels of credentials. One is RBAC to use the product itself, what kind of permissions you want to give to the user, what they can do. And then there's a registration process for these apps. So we still need some sort of credentials for the apps.
Absolutely.
That's a one-time registration. Once you give it to the product, the next time you'll just use that.
And then that usage is fully audited, so somebody could go in and look at the audit and say,
right.
That credential for that particular app was used in order to perform a restore?
So from an audit perspective, it'll tell you what user did an operation, so that's more from a user of the product itself. This credential it's a one-time thing, so once you give the credentials, that's the same credential it's going to use.
Right, so you'd have to audit the credential from the app end rather than from your software end to see when it was being used.
Right, so the first time you register with it, there'll be an audit saying you use this credentials to log in.
Yeah.
But when it's actually performing the restore, it's something you can monitor from the app side.
From the app end, okay.
Okay, I think there was another question I may have missed. Is that? Okay. Yeah, again, so that's the core, how we instantly access, and now we can think of all the possibilities, right? So this data can be used in terms of disaster recovery. If I want to do it for reporting, I want to run reports against it. Typically, you've restored the data, use that to run reports. If you can make it instantly accessible, I don't need to wait for the whole data to be restored. I can just do a live access, run reports against it, and delete it. And we've also seen customers using it for patch management, like Patch Tuesdays. they have a server, they update. So again, if you bring it up as a VM, run your patch testing, if everything is good, and then move ahead with it. Otherwise, we can just instantly clean it up.
It's DevOps is there, so you have container support for this instant access, or?
So instant access, where we're talking more from a DevOps perspective is when you are requesting data refresh. Every time you spin up a new copy, if you spin up a new build environment, you need a certain amount of servers. I need my build server, I need my app server, et cetera, just to run operations against it. So what we're saying through DevOps is through APIs, you can automate some of these. It's not necessarily related to Docker. We don't have Docker support, so that's the answer to your first question. From a DevOps perspective, it's more how can we provide API access to the product so the developer can directly access the data instead of waiting for ops person to actually provision the infrastructure for you.
Okay.
In the analytics, do you guys have anything planned for things like ransomware,
Right. So in terms of ransomware, today we are exploring some options. The instant access allows you to quickly change or look into activity. We are working with some other teams to see if we can extend to do some ransomware as well.
Within IBM?
It's just detect patterns in terms of usage, but that's not there today.
All right. So it's within IBM's group of softwares, or is
Right now, it's still very early in the exploration options, yeah, but most likely something in IBM, yes.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, just in the interest of time, maybe I'll skip through a few of these and go into a technical overview. So again, in terms of the product, who we are trying to work towards, who cares and why, we see typically three personas in terms of the line of business. These are the app developers who are wanting self-service, data access, and they're looking into the DevOps model. There's the infrastructure team whose primary goal is to make sure the infrastructure is up and running all the time. They're not necessarily working on the apps itself. They're just on the platforms, on the storage or the server side. Their duty is to keep uptime as well as lower infrastructure costs. And then the business leader who's making the decisions, they have a cloud strategy in mind. They want to achieve maximum uptime, and they're also keeping in mind reduced cost and looking at other strategies.
Prashant, you had indicated earlier that you supported things like COS, Worm, and AWS and Azure.
Mm-hmm.
So you could instantly recover some data that's sitting in AWS or something like that? Is that what you're saying?
Right. So the functionality we've enabled is from our backup repository, we can offload into one of these object stores like Amazon or Azure. So that data is also mountable. So what we're doing is from our target backup repository, through the cloud objects, we'll fetch the objects that is needed to mount that virtual machine or application. So back on premises, if I say I want an app to be instantly mountable, I can mount it from the object storage repository from Amazon or Azure.
And you'll retrieve the data to fabricate whatever the snapshot of the moment needs to be.
That is correct. So we don't have to retrieve all the data from these cloud objects. We'll just fetch the data that is important to bring up as a VM. And as the user starts reading or writing, and then we'll fetch objects as needed. Again, it's possible, but it depends. There are other factors as well, like your bandwidth and other criteria as well. But to answer your question, yes, we can instantly mount data from the data that's offloaded to Amazon or IBM COS or Azure Blob. Okay, just one last slide before we move into the technical overview, and we'll cover some of these in more detail on how the instant mount works and from the object storage offload. Some of these we maintain as a key principles. It needs to be agentless and efficient. As much as possible, we don't need any user agent management. Everything is managed through the product itself. So for VMware, it's completely agentless. We just use credentials and use VMware's APIs. For applications, we still inject a lightweight agent, but that's, again, managed by SPP. Users don't need to keep track of anything to install. They don't have to do patch management. All that is managed through centrally by the Protect Plus product itself.
So something like an Oracle database, though, do you have to perform a stun in order to pass the Oracle proprietary backup functionality? SQL is the same.
Right. So it's a functionality is different between SQL and Oracle. Oracle, we use RMAN image-based backup.
So you are using RMAN.
Yes, correct. So RMAN provides all that functionality of quiescing the database, giving an image block change for us, and it also gives us change block information. Whereas for SQL, we leverage VSS, and VSS provides the quiesce operation, and then we get the change blocks from the server itself.
Which will be different once you've got Office 365 SQL.
That is correct, exactly. So your SaaS-based applications, it's a completely different model.
Right.
We don't have access to the database itself. It's more likely like a mailbox or the granular objects that we want to back up.
Are you pushing that agent from a central place, or is that something that users have to manually install?
We are pushing it from a central location. So there's a registration process where you say, okay, this is the app server, the host name and basic credentials. We'll use that to push the lightweight app into it and then do any quiescing and that's more required when you're doing the restores, because when you're doing the restores, we have to mount the data as a file system, so we use the same credentials for that. And we've also built the whole product around a scalable catalog. So that allows us to do things like file indexing, so to do file level recovery. So any of the VM backup that we can do, we can index the files within a VM. So our backend database allows us to expand that. And you'll see in a demo when I'm showing, we can do a quick search, a wildcard search of file name, and it'll show me the result across snapshots, across hypervisors, which I can pick and choose the version and restore.
So it's a support for Microsoft Exchange. Do you do that sort of searching and low-level recovery at an email box or at an email level, or?
That is correct. So for Exchange, we do support database level backup and database level restore. On top of that, we provide granular recovery for individual emails. So there's you can search for mailboxes or emails, folders, et cetera, and recover them as well.
So you could instantly recover like a mailbox or for instance, all of an Exchange environment if you wanted to, and then you could search within that.
That is correct. So the granular restore leverages the instant access functionality. It instantly maps it to a location where we can do the search and restore for granular recovery.
Prashant, let me ask you a question. Maybe I have a bit of attention span deficit or something like that, but there are a lot of data protection solutions in the market at this time which are kind of modern. So why would I want to go for your product? Can you give me a kind of explanation why it's compelling to use your solution against other solutions which do similar things?
That's a great question. Yes. So yes, there are other data protection vendors who are doing this modernization as well. So in our case, we are trying to differentiate with some basic principles. Like one is our deployment is completely software defined, and we want to make sure that the customers can leverage their existing infrastructure.
So when you see software defined, is it just that you're installing some software on the physical server, or do you have a kind of underlying architecture to store the data somehow? Because to me, software defined implies a kind of storage subsystem, a file system, or something like that. Right.
So yes, we are doing both. So we are. Along with our deployment, there are a few components. Again, we'll go through that in the technical overview, which is there's a management server component of it, and there is the backup repository, which is a file system that we're providing as a software-defined version. You can put it in your existing physical servers with attached storage, or you can run it as a VM with some backend database, backend storage to it, and you can use that as a backup repository. On top of that, the file indexing that I was mentioning about, our global catalog, which indexes all these files, makes it easily searchable and recoverable, and it works across the board. You can search files on multiple versions, different hypervisors. So you're backing up VMware and Hyper-V, and you're searching for a file. You don't need to know if you're going to VMware or Hyper-V. It'll just give you a search of where that is.
Yeah, so that brings me to another question, and then I promise I'm going to shut up. So the point is, okay, you have this indexing, and you have this backup and data protection system. Do you do anything further with the data? You're indexing it. Are you able to do some kind of smart searching, like using whatever expressions, like all files like this or something like that?
Right. So there.
Engine. And sorry, can you do something more with the metadata that you're collecting on the backups, or is it just purely data protection?
Good question. So in terms of the first question, in terms of can you do more than just search? Yeah, we can search through patterns, like you give me a PDF, show me in the specific folders, there are filters and parameters, then you can apply to the search itself to narrow down your search results. In terms of the metadata, for this release, we added some enhancements to expose that metadata. So this is the first step towards that. So we can expose the analytics through APIs, and the next evolution of that is going to be perform some intelligent operation against it, either tie it to some other analytics tools, or do more with the data, like ransomware, detect patterns, detect anomalies, etc. So we've taken the first step in this release to exposing all that through APIs. We'll build on top of that.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, there's a lot of stuff like legal hold, GDPR, that sort of stuff, right? I mean, you can actually get a lot of things and actually kind of like set aside some data set for compliance, governance, that sort of things, right?
Right. Then GDPR is something that keeps coming up.
Yeah.
It's a hot topic, right? So GDPR, you not only need to know where it is, but you have to find, is it part of the backup? Is it part of the backup repository? So the instant access and the APIs for analytics basically allows users to say, okay, if I want to find certain data, and if it's in a database, I can't go into the production database to run all these queries. Mm-hmm. I can instantly mount your database, and from that database, I can see if there's someone, if I can find out the details about the person who's looking to clean up the data, right?
Okay, so you can spin up a copy and just run the stuff, right?
Right. So we are basically allowing the data to be spun up so quickly that you don't have to run all this in the production. Just bring it up in an alternate site. And because we have version information, you can go back to a different point in time. And the object storage offload, even if you're keeping for long-term retention, from the object, you don't have to recover whole data back to just test it. We can spin it up instantly from an object storage copy and make it live so they can run the queries against it.
Okay. And also one thing is that most of the companies doing data protection are now rebranding themselves as data management companies. So everybody's trying to execute on that, some better, some worse perhaps.
Right.
But they're trying to kind of dig and find more value in the data. So are you going to show maybe later some kind of roadmap information so that we can understand if that's something you're going to go into as well? Or
Right. I don't have a specific roadmap slide, but I can share, again, like I said, so in terms of data management, we are our data reuse. That's our philosophy, right? So you can reuse the data, put it to more use, not just use it for backup and recovery. You want to make use of it a little more. We are starting off with the test or development management and develop and refresh. As we move along, we'll try to get into all these analytics areas, try to integrate with some of the analytics tools, get more information about it. Another topic that Jim will talk about is cyber resiliency. Is like how can we air gap that data and use that to make sure that if there's ransomware, how can we quickly recover from it? So those are some of the functionalities that we are thinking of near term.
So in your roadmap, do you have things like integration with SIEM tools like QRadar that you guys have, or even Splunk?
QRadar, not necessarily, but Splunk is one of those where again the APIs are there. We just need to integrate with those, and that also makes a good use case for like ransomware detection or anything like that. Right. So through Splunk.
But why not QRadar? I mean,
there's nothing against it. It's just.
It's an IBM product, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like I'm not saying no. It's just in terms of priorities and things. It's Splunk and QRadar are there. We haven't made the decision on which one you're going with first.
Okay.